It's about 38 degrees. There's a light rain that might or might not be sleet falling. There's a winter weather advisory.
Yeah.
As we record this, that can only mean one thing. College baseball season, baby.
Yeah.
Opening day. By the time you hear this, the weather's going to be better. The Tar Heels going to be hosting Texas Tech in the season opening series. Head coach Scott Forbes here with us. Coach Forbes, thank you for coming by.
Thank y'all for having me. Yeah, it's not an ideal baseball day today. Maybe, like you said, Friday. As long as we have sun, we can deal with it.
What's the mood over at Boshamer Stadium coming off a trip to Omaha and a great fall?
I mean, our guys are just definitely ready to play somebody else. I would say that's the biggest thing. We scrimmaged Friday, Saturday, Sunday. We got through our scrimmages healthy, which is the most important thing. But we all just kind of looked at each other as coaches, and we just said it's time to play somebody else. I mean, how many sports you start in August, you play each other, you play each other, you play each other, you get two opponents in the fall, and then you're back at it in the preseason. So I would say the biggest thing is our guys are really excited just to play a real game against another opponent. They're definitely ready, and now it's just, fine-tuning things and taking care of their bodies and having lighter practices.
What have you learned about your group over these several months, going back to August, leading up until opening day? And as we're talking to Scott, it's not yet Friday, but this is airing on Friday, so it is opening day. So opening day today, what have you learned between then and now?
We have a very well-led group, getting Knapp back and getting Vanderbrate back, having a guy like Luke Stevenson back, Gavin Gallagher, guys that got great experience on an Omaha team.
Sure.
The other thing I've learned, is teams handle that differently. This team is definitely hungry. They got that taste of getting to Omaha. So I don't think we're going to see that Omaha hangover where they think, hey, we're just automatically going to get back there. Oh, we did something outstanding, because it's over. Mm-hmm. It matters to other people, but it doesn't matter to this team because there are players on this team that haven't been to Omaha. But we have a lot of guys that have been. So we have good player leadership. We've got older players that have played a lot of college baseball, which is always a good feeling as a head coach. And our pitching staff is new. We lost some big-time guys, but we also returned some guys with valuable experience and added some talent in that. So it's a balanced group. I'm really excited just for them because I can tell that they're ready to play for sure.
On paper, that pitching staff looks stout. How do you and Coach Gaines want to use them here in the early part of the season?
Yeah, they do look good on paper. But paper's paper, like we were talking about earlier. I think it's just figuring out how to take the staff and put guys in the right roles that give our team the best chance to win. And we all know that every pitcher wants to be a Friday night starter or wants to be a, quote, starter, but that's just not the case. Dalton Pence, I thought, arguably was our best pitcher on our pitching staff last year, and for us to have the season we were going to have, he needed to be out of the bullpen. So we've had that conversation, and that's going to be a huge factor with this team and that pitching staff. I met with them yesterday and said, hey, how you guys handle your roles will have a huge impact on the success we have. If you're listening to the outside noise and it's all about you and it's all about your role as a starter, then we're not going to be as good as we could be. But if you buy into whatever role because all of you aren't going to start. We're going to have 3 guys starting on the weekend and 1 midweek as it goes on. We play 2 midweeks early. I think if our guys buy into it, which I believe they will, I think it's going to be a fun pitching staff to watch. But then between Coach Gaines and Coach Howell, that's a lot of experience. And then I have some pitching coach experience. It'll change throughout the year, but once we can get them to settle in those roles, I think it'll be fun to watch them.
The point of our conversation today with Coach Forbes is more about looking ahead and previewing the season and all those different things. I do want to just take one step back to last year. What was have you allowed yourself any time to kind of think about you've been to Omaha as an assistant coach, but you're the head coach now. This is your program now. And the atmosphere at Boshamer Stadium, the moments with your guys, just all those different things that are part of the cool part of going to Omaha. Have you allowed yourself any time to enjoy that, appreciate it, and be happy about it?
It's Probably not. It's a kind of a blessing and a curse, I guess. The way that I'm wired is, I think as long as I am coaching, my mind's going to think about the current team and this season, and I definitely have looked back and watched some of the games, I guess is what my answer would be. But I learned, after that 2013 season as an assistant, I felt like that year was the only year I was kind of like satisfied, except for not winning the national championship. We're 59-12, maybe let the guard down a little bit and didn't think like, okay, that doesn't matter. I want to be 59-12 again. So that's how my brain thinks now is, we got some of our best commitments are going to play every day on this team in the hotel in Omaha. That's just the way it goes. And, for me, I would say I enjoyed watching everybody else enjoy it the most. Family members, players, parents, people that support. Because Omaha's, y'all been. I mean, it's awesome. And they have a great time. But I'm just one of those, I enjoy it because we're there, and I appreciate it because I know how hard it is. But I'm just not natured to sit back and be like, oh, we made it to Omaha, or I made it to Omaha as a head coach. I just look like, hey, that's what we're supposed to do. That's what we want to do, and how do we do it again?
Carolina baseball has been good before, but it always felt like it was the same group of fans that was there every single time. Why is it feels like it's catching fire a little bit. Got the biggest crowd ever at the first pitch dinner, season ticket sales way up. Why is it right now that's causing people to go, you know what, I think I want to be in on that?
Man, I think a lot of it has to do with our players and the way they play. I heard a really good podcast by Mookie.
Was it this podcast, Scott?
Y'all's are good. This was actually Mookie Betts, his own podcast, interviewing Dave Roberts, his manager. And he just talked about how you play the game is important. And, we talk about that at Carolina baseball. So I hope it's the way that our guys play the game. Obviously, we all know the more you win, the more people are going to come, period. But we hope it's a fun team every year to watch. They're going to respect the game. They're not going to embarrass anybody. But I also think college baseball is an awesome thing to watch. The balls are harder, so the ball's flying more, so there are going to be more runs. The games are more exciting than they've ever been. There is a pitch clock. The game's moving on a little bit quicker. And more great players, I think, now are going to school because of the 20 rounds, and you're getting to see guys. I mean, I just step back some days at practice, and I'm like, man, these guys are really good. We have a freshman the other day, Ryan Lynch from New Jersey. I mean, nobody's even talking about him. His first pitch in the scrimmage is 97. And I'm like, that's just not normal, And but I want to give credit, too, to Katrina and John Bruner and our game day operations they've worked hard on making the Bosch an awesome place to be. We've had the support from a ton of donors to add things to the Bosch to keep it looking great. And we play a great schedule, and we've been successful at home. So I would say that's the biggest thing. And, baseball is such a great game to go watch, especially as the weather starts to warm up. And if you love the team and you think they're pretty good and they're fun to watch, it's a get-together because it's 9 innings. You can eat a hot dog, you can have a beer, you can have a Coke, whatever, and you can miss a couple pitches and, getting the most important part of the game an hour or two later. Just kind of baseball. You got to kind of know that.
This is my totally 10,000-foot view, so I might be wrong. And if I'm wrong, please tell me I'm wrong. Feels like you guys have upped the depth of velocity on your pitching staff here the last couple of years. Is that a fair statement? And how difficult is that to do?
It is difficult to do. Our top priority is still command. The velocity doesn't mean anything if you don't throw strikes. But and I want to give Bubba credit for this because he allowed us to add another position. So essentially we have 2 pitching coaches. Coach Al is behind all the numbers. The new pitching area that we created, I still refuse to call it a lab. But, velocity does matter. And if you add it in with command, it's part of college baseball. It does help you win games. So, I think you have to trust your development and whatever you're working on in that pitching specific area. If you can apply it, it can help the guys create more velocity. But it's still, you got to work hard. You have to, be nutritionally sound. There are things that you're going to gain velocity with. I think more kids, they're just a little bit bigger, a little bit stronger. They're, it's a little scary because they're more Tommy Johns than they've ever been.
Right.
And the weighted balls. So you have to monitor all that stuff. But it does, you can't shy away from it. If you don't have your off speed that day and you've got control of your fastball and your fastball's 88, you can't throw it down the middle. If it's 94, 96, you can throw it down the middle like a Matt Poston did or a Dalton Pence did. So that's where the game's changed a little bit. But combining that with command is what separates the better pitching staffs. We do give Coach Gaines a hard time because we just recruit the best pitchers. We always joke about it. Doesn't matter left-handed, right-handed, size. For some reason, this pitching staff is like gigantic.
Yeah, look like linebackers.
I mean, Brandon Martirano and Kyle Datras and Matt Horvath, they're sitting there watching the scrimmage the other day. He's like, what are these guys eating? I said, well, some of them are 24, so that's, but Coach Gaines, we've been asking him lately if he's trying to recruit every pitcher that he is no longer taller than, basically. But there's a lot that goes into it. Coach Gass does a good job, but I think having Coach Howell in that role and him and Coach Gaines being able to work together has helped that tremendously.
We had the discussion in here one day about, because of all the things he could do, was Vance Honeycutt the best baseball player Carolina's ever had? And he now is not here anymore. So when you look at your 2025 lineup, offensively and defensively, who are some guys people should be watching out for? If they only knew Vance Honeycutt, who should they be watching now?
I would first of all say don't compare anybody to Vance Honeycutt. I think the most underrated thing, everybody wants to talk about the home runs. Everybody wants to talk about the speed. But his defensive ability changed the game. If you talk to any coach in the ACC, they would tell you how many outs that they thought were doubles playing at the University of North Carolina in 3 years that kid caught. So I do want to warn everybody that our center fielder this year is really good. I think he's a dynamic player, but there are going to be some balls that he may not catch that Vance would have caught. And I don't know if he's the best player to ever play at North Carolina. I know he's the best center fielder in my almost 30 years of coaching that I've ever seen in college baseball, period. And obviously he wasn't too bad at the plate because if the ball hit his barrel, it was basically a double or a home run. But I would say, the transfers that we brought in to fill the void of Casey Cook, Vance Honeycutt, and D'Onofrio are all really good players. Kane Kepley from Liberty definitely, he sticks out to me because he's more of an analytical player. He may not hit 25 home runs, but his on-base percentage is going to be through the roof. He's going to walk more than he strikes out. He's one of the best base stealers I've seen since I've been coaching. So he's a green light guy. If that on-base percentage is high, I think he can steal 30 to 40 bases. So that's a guy that if he gets on base, he's probably going to score. But I think our whole team, the guy you have to look at before anybody else is Luke Stevenson. I think he's in the mix to go in the top 10 picks, and I think if he has a great year, which I think he will have, he could go even higher than that. So I think if you have that superstar player, you kind of look at everybody else, and hopefully you have some more superstars. But it's rare that you have a guy like a Vance Honeycutt, and the very next year you have another guy that could go even higher in the draft. And Luke Steven is a draft-eligible sophomore. But I would say that those transfers, Tyson Bass sticks out to me. He can really run, very similar to D'Onofrio. He's right-handed. Rom Kellis is probably the best junior college player in the country last year. And those guys, like we talked earlier, they've helped us in that first year. The Jesse Wiersbicki, the Cody Stubbs, the Dylan Enwires, the Dallas Tessers. And then we're going to move Ahmad over to short, which is going to be, he's a shortstop. He just played second base last year, and returning a guy like Gavin, who's a dynamic player as well, and some older players. I would say what stands out the most is just we're older. And we have a lot of college at-bats under our belt.
Scott Jackson was here at Carolina. You guys were on the same staff together for multiple years. Scott went and did a good job as the head coach at Liberty. In fact, brought one of his teams here to Chapel Hill for a regional. Now he's back on your staff. What's that relationship like, and what does he bring to Carolina baseball?
Man, we're honored to have him back. And he fit in immediately because Coach Gaines was on his staff. He coached Coach Gaines. He coached Coach Wiersbicki. He's known Jason Howell forever. But he also has 8 years of head coaching experience. And if you really look at what he did at Liberty, you step back and I've been at Winthrop, I've been in a mid-major, and you know how hard it is. It's hard to make a regional once every 10 years, now more than ever, compared to what it used to be like. So just having him back, but he's a baseball guy. He's a really hard-working, blue-collar type guy. Knowing that I have somebody else on my staff or our staff that's, so ahead and going to be prepared and ready and practice planning and recruiting. So it's only made us better. We're lucky to have him back. It's made all of our coaches better. And he's excited to be back. He came back to North Carolina for many, many reasons, but the most important reason was to try to win a national championship. And so he's helped tremendously. Just having that guy to talk to, like, hey, I didn't know. I thought I knew. I used to always be like, oh, I would do this or I'd do that. But then I'm become a head coach. I'm like, oh, now I understand, why Coach Fox was thinking like this or thinking like that. So at the end of the day, he's got those 8 years of having to make those decisions and make the final decision. That helps me tremendously.
I think part of this is just how you are as a person. But we have a lot of coaches in here, and many times they seem very harried or stressed by kind of what college sports is right now. You don't give off that same vibe. Why is that? How have you adapted to how things are now without letting it impact what feels like kind of just your love for doing it every day?
It's definitely a challenge because things have changed, and people ask me all the time, like, what about all this new stuff? A lot of coaches are getting out, and I'm like, well, number one, I came into it when it all happened, so that helped me. My number one answer would be my faith. I'm not going to hide from that. I believe that I'm coaching now as I've gotten older. I know why I coach. And, obviously we're competitive. You're not going to meet anybody. If you really know us well enough and you're in the coach's locker room, especially after a loss, you would find out quickly that these dudes freaking hate to lose. However, at the end of the day, when you have kids, you should be thinking through the lens like, okay, what kind of experience is this young and giving these kids that right experience and trusting that if you do it that way, you work your tail off, good things will happen. And you learn every year too as a head coach to sweat the stuff that really doesn't matter less and focus on the right stuff. And at the end of the day, the two things that matter the most are your current players, period. Like, they need to come first, everything that goes on with them, because this team's never going to be the same. Somebody's going to be gone, and multiple people will be gone just due to graduation and stuff. And then you're focusing on next year's team and recruiting and everything else, whatever it is. You just have to make sure you're aligned the right way. And then I credit my mom for giving me the best book I've ever read called The Power of Positive Thinking. I read it every year before the season. It's just a quick reminder that, being positive matters, and positive body language. Everybody at the Bosch, at the end of the day, I've learned it starting and ends with me. Like, even how I say, hey, Adam, like, how you doing today? To Bryant Gaines, he's got kids. Coach Jackson, our new secretary, Kate, or administrative assistant. So I take a lot of pride in that, and not, and sometimes you have to fake it. We all have stuff going on. But that book that my mom sent me reminds me of, like, okay, being positive doesn't guarantee we're all going to be great. We're going to win 1 million games. But being negative pretty much guarantees that you're going to suck. And nobody wants to suck. So why be negative? And that's something I tell our guys, like, if you can't figure that out, you better figure it out quickly, because you're going to be positive. You're going to play with joy. You're going to smile. You're not going to have bad body language. And I really believe in that.
How did you figure all this out? I think sometimes if you've never been a head coach before and then you become a head coach, it's like drinking through a fire hose at some points in time. You seem to, not that I'm suggesting that you can't continue to grow and all those things, and I know you'll try to do that, but it just seems like you've figured out how to do this. How did you figure this out?
I wouldn't say that. I think that is a great point. I think number one, understanding you never really figure it out, and you have to adapt, and you have to listen. Whatever you're preaching to your players, like, are you coachable? Do you listen? You know, do you get mad when somebody gives you a different idea? Are you open-minded? I think I figured out, like Nick Saban said, when he figured out there's a difference between a transformational coach and a transactional coach, that if you're transformational, your success chances are better. And I still believe that, even though there are transactions today. We all know about it with NIL. But if they're just transactions, I'm sorry, eventually, you can't tell me the Eagles don't have more than just a big payroll. They've got something in the locker room that makes that team special. Leadership, character, that type of thing. It looked like Ohio State football, research and diving into that, because the players, do most of that. I think surrounding myself with an unbelievable staff was number one, the most important thing. Guys that work their tails off, that I trust, that have the same, goals, that we all have the same goals, and that is to win, number one. And I definitely wouldn't say I've figured it out by any means. I would say the only thing I have figured out is that the relationship side matters. And to get the most out of a player, as a head coach, I have to get to know that player individually. And that's what's so awesome about having a great staff. I have to remind myself when I walk on the practice field, like, okay, Scott Jackson's out there, Coach Big, these guys are really good. It might be best for me today while we're doing our fundamental drills to go to left field and check in with Reese Holbrook, and then go to center. And when I say check in, hey man, how you doing? What's going on? Things like that. So that's what I guess would say I figured out. But I definitely haven't figured everything else out. I mean, I bunted Madera against LSU and it went foul, and thank God Colby rescued me. We may not even be talking in here.
All right, before we let you go, just tell everybody again, like, what's the schedule? When can they see the Tar Heels? What's happening?
It's an awesome schedule. I think D1 Baseball did a deep dive into our non-conference schedule and said it might be the toughest in the country.
Well, you got the Cougs.
We got the Cougs.
I think it was like number 14 before that. They're like, oh, watch out, they got the Cougs.
Yeah, which is so exciting, too, for Chad and Reese. That's a big deal. Reese was here as a kid, and Chad and I are close, so I'm really looking forward to that. But it's a tough schedule. Texas Tech is an unbelievable program to start off. We got Kansas State. A&T is always good in their conference. So every game is going to be competitive. So we're excited about that. I think the fans will be excited about watching guys that they know that have played a lot of college baseball. And we've got some new guys that are going to work their way in there that are exciting players. But I don't think there's a game on the schedule where it's just like, hey, if we just show up, we're going to win. And that's the great thing about college baseball. If you don't show up against North Carolina A&T, they're probably saving their Friday night starter early in the season, and you're going to be down in the 8th inning. But Kansas State on a Wednesday played in a super regional. East Carolina, that series, everybody gets into that. And then we got, I think, Stony Brook, who's been to the College World Series, who's very good in their conference. Midweek games, VCU regional teams, Coastal Carolina, UNCWs. And then it's like, we just have an easy ACC opener against Stanford. Until last year, they've been 3 times in a row to Omaha. So hopefully, that's what I'm hoping the most, is that fan attendance carries over, because we're playing really good teams. So they also get to see some unbelievable players rolling in here, with Texas Tech and all these teams. I mean, Stanford has the first baseman that everybody tried to get. So it's going to be a fun schedule to watch and a fun team to watch